disclose the facts as they are. I mean, whether they're dead or alive, I'm going to tell the same story because that's my job, is to get to the truth of the matter. My name is Greg Kading. I retired from the LAPD.
After years of silence, fresh charges finally dropped in the Tupac Shakur situation. And when those documents hit the public, they had some heavy names attached. Snoop Dogg's involvement became a major talking point. Social media went crazy when people started reading through everything, with folks pointing out how Snoop allegedly had the power to change the outcome that night. According to statements from Faison Love buried in these 2-decade-old documents, there was a real chance to prevent what went down, and Snoop was supposedly in position to make that happen. The whole thing got people questioning what really could have been different if certain moves were made back then. The hip-hop community had been demanding answers for literally decades at this point, and now that information was finally surfacing, it hit different. Fans who grew up listening to Pac's music felt betrayed all over again, wondering why it took this long for the truth to come out. The timing of these revelations raised even more eyebrows, making people wonder what else might still be hidden. This wasn't just about solving a cold case anymore. It became about accountability and understanding the real dynamics that were playing out behind the scenes during one of rap's darkest periods. The streets had their theories for years, but seeing it spelled out in official paperwork changed the whole conversation.
I always felt when Pac died, it was because Snoop could have stopped that whole thing. I mean, because like I said, Snoop was a Crip. Pac offended some Crips. Doing some game, some dumb, really. It was a whole, set off a whole chain of events. You know, in LA don't get mad, they get even. So, you want a real Pac story? That's my Pac story. As Pac would be alive today if he had stayed allies with Snoop and not crossed Snoop.
Police records started painting a wild picture when Russell Poole's investigation notes surfaced, pointing fingers in unexpected directions. The detective had his own theory brewing. He believed Suge Knight orchestrated the whole thing to stop Tupac from leaving Death Row Records, then cleverly shifted blame toward the Crips to keep investigators chasing ghosts. What made this even messier was how they allegedly planned to use Snoop Dogg as their scapegoat, considering his status as one of the most recognizable Crip-affiliated figures in the industry. That connection alone gave them a convenient narrative to push. Here's where things get really twisted though. Snoop was actually scheduled to roll with Tupac that fatal night in Vegas, but somehow ended up being a no-show. Investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something about his absence didn't add up right. You gotta understand the context. Back in those days, Snoop wasn't the lovable mainstream figure he is today. He was still deeply connected to street politics and had his ear to the ground in ways most people didn't realize. Some folks started suggesting maybe he heard whispers through his Crip connections about what was being planned for Pac and strategically kept his distance that night. The plot thickened even more when old interviews resurfaced showing Snoop talking about how he genuinely believed Tupac had turned against him right before everything went down. Whether that was real tension or just perception, it added another layer to an already complicated situation. The streets were watching, and the more these details leaked, the more questions people had about who really knew what and when they knew it. Decades later, we're still piecing together a puzzle that probably has way more pieces than anyone wants to admit.
Say a week before he died, we was best of friends. 2 days before he died, I don't think he liked me.
Why?
Because we was in New York, and it happened. New York, they shot at me and did all kind of shit to me, like just the worst you could think of. And I forgave him. And went and did an interview and was asked, how do I feel about Puffy and Big? And I was like, I like it. I want to do some music with him. And that just rubbed Cuz the wrong way. Like, tried to kill me, how that you, and you talking about you want to do a song with him? I wasn't thinking about his emotions. I was thinking about the way I felt at the time. I wasn't into no controversy. I liked his music. They was our friends. We was all friends at one point. This video footage of all of us hanging out.
Sean Combs, better known as Diddy, had his own complicated chapter in this whole saga that people often overlook. When the documentary started breaking down his potential involvement, they highlighted something that went beyond just East Coast versus West Coast beef. The filmmakers suggested Diddy harbored a deep-seated jealousy toward Tupac, wanting to capture that same raw authenticity and cultural impact that Pac naturally possessed. It wasn't just about music sales or chart positions. It was about presence, respect, and influence. People who watched closely started connecting dots that painted an uncomfortable picture. Diddy had the business mind and the polish, sure, but Tupac had something money couldn't buy: genuine street credibility mixed with artistic depth that resonated across every demographic. That combination made Pac untouchable in ways that clearly ate at certain industry figures. The documentary didn't hold back when exploring this dynamic, showing how Diddy's envy might have played into bigger decisions being made behind closed doors. What made this revelation hit harder was understanding the culture of that era. Hip-hop was still defining itself, and being seen as authentic versus manufactured could make or break your entire legacy. Diddy represented the corporate, calculated side of the game, while Tupac embodied raw emotion and street truth. That fundamental difference created tension that apparently went way deeper than most people realized at the time. Looking back now with all these documents and testimonies surfacing, you start seeing how personal rivalries mixed with business interests created a dangerous situation that nobody could control once it got rolling.
Pac was a shining example of everything that Diddy wanted to be, and he was that naturally. He was charismatic, he was sought after, desired, he was very well liked and a naturally likable person. He was charming, he actually had intrinsic talent, he was a star. He was what Diddy tried to force his way into becoming. Diddy, through force, through manipulation, through fear-mongering, tried to become loved and adored and liked. But all he could manage is like a twisted clone of that he was able to garner through fear. But back to my original point, he thought he triumphed over Tupac by when actually what he did was make Tupac immortal. And by Diddy continuing to live and earn more wealth and, in his mind, earn more adoration, he thought he triumphed. He thought he won overall.
The paper trail connecting Sean Combs to Tupac's situation goes deeper than most people initially thought. 50 Cent recently dropped hints that the story's far from finished, mentioning how there's additional footage that didn't even make it into the Netflix special that's supposedly headed to YouTube soon. This unreleased material allegedly covers some personal territory that adds a whole different dimension to the rivalry, specifically involving Diddy's complicated history with Sarah Chapman, who happens to be the mother of his daughter Chance Combs, born back in 2006. Here's the wild part that investigators caught on to. Sarah Chapman had her own history with Tupac Shakur, dating back to 1995 when they were linked together. Detectives digging through old records stumbled across photographs from November 18, 1995, showing Tupac and Sarah together, and apparently this discovery opened up a whole new angle to explore. According to people close to the situation, Diddy had serious feelings for Sarah, allegedly calling her his ideal woman, and the one he'd been searching for. So when Tupac entered the picture, it created personal friction that went way beyond industry competition. The jealousy factor became impossible to ignore once all these pieces started fitting together. We're talking about a man who already felt overshadowed by Tupac's influence and respect in the culture. Now watching him connect with someone he considered his dream girl. That kind of situation breeds resentment that doesn't just disappear overnight. Some investigators theorize this personal angle might have been the actual catalyst that pushed things from competitive tension into something far more dangerous, potentially explaining the timing of certain events that followed. The streets always knew beef could get personal, but this was on another level entirely. That initial plan apparently didn't go the way it was supposed to, leaving everyone involved scrambling for what came next. When the legal proceedings started heating up around Sean Combs, documents revealed details about a second, more calculated approach to the situation. A former law enforcement officer came forward with explosive claims, stating that Diddy allegedly put up $1 million to have Tupac eliminated. The aftermath supposedly triggered a chain reaction, with Suge Knight responding by orchestrating the hit on Biggie Smalls in retaliation, creating a cycle of violence that forever changed hip-hop. The name Dwayne Keith Davis, better known as Keefy D, kept surfacing throughout these investigations as the alleged middleman who made everything happen. According to testimony and reports, Diddy didn't handle the logistics himself. He brought in Keefe D to coordinate everything and recruit the people who would actually carry out the operation. That's exactly the role Keefe D allegedly fulfilled, acting as the organizer while keeping distance between the person funding it and those pulling triggers. Years down the line, Keefe D found himself in an interrogation room facing federal investigators who weren't letting him walk away without answers. During those sessions, he reportedly confirmed meeting with Diddy on multiple occasions, essentially admitting he was the architect behind the entire operation. These weren't casual encounters either. They were strategic planning sessions that laid out how everything would go down. The feds had been building this case brick by brick, and when Keefe D started talking, it validated suspicions that had been floating around for decades. The streets always had their version of events, but hearing it come from someone directly involved changed everything about how people understood that era's violence.
All four of those occasions, there's San Diego, Anaheim, Irvine, and Vegas. Which ones do you actually talk to Puffy at?
Every one.
Every one of them. Which of those four is it when you talk to him about Tupac?
It was really about both of them, either one. It was
Tupac and Suge, you mean?
Yeah.
Once all this information hit the streets and went public, people started looking at Sean Combs through a completely different lens. Everything about his past got put under a microscope. Business dealings, relationships, feuds, all of it became fair game for re-examination. Internet detectives went into overdrive, pulling up old clips and interviews trying to find anything that might have been missed the first time around. His entire timeline got scrutinized in ways that made even his biggest supporters start asking uncomfortable questions about what he might actually be capable of doing. The tension reached a breaking point when an interviewer decided to address the elephant in the room directly during a sit-down conversation. The moment that topic came up, you could feel the entire energy shift. Diddy's usual smooth, confident demeanor cracked as he tried navigating questions he clearly wasn't prepared to handle in that setting. The interviewer wasn't backing down though, pressing for clarity on allegations that had been swirling for years but were now getting official attention. What made it particularly uncomfortable was watching someone who'd spent decades controlling his narrative suddenly lose that control in real time. The silence between questions stretched longer than normal. His responses became more calculated and defensive, and everyone watching could sense something was off. This wasn't the polished media personality people were used to seeing. This was someone genuinely rattled by questions he couldn't charm his way out of. The clip went viral immediately, with people analyzing every facial expression and pause, trying to read between the lines of what wasn't being said directly.
It was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because you listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah, no, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
The whole situation keeps evolving as more people come forward with their own pieces of the story. Social media has become a battleground where everyone's got an opinion about who knew what and when they knew it. Old associates are getting interviewed left and right, some confirming details while others are trying to distance themselves from the whole era. The culture's demanding accountability in ways that weren't possible back in the 90s when everything first went down. What's really interesting is how younger generations are discovering this history for the first time through these new revelations. They're going back and listening to the music with completely different contexts, picking up on lyrics and tensions that flew over people's heads decades ago. The documentaries keep dropping, each one claiming to have the real story. But somehow, there's always another layer that gets peeled back just when you think you've heard everything. Meanwhile, the legal system is still grinding through cases that have been cold for 20+ years, and every court date brings new information that contradicts or confirms what people thought they knew. Lawyers are filing motions, witnesses are being called, and the hip-hop community is watching every single move like it's the most important trial in music history. Some folks are calling for complete transparency, wanting every document and testimony released so the public can finally understand what really happened during one of the darkest chapters in rap. Others think some secrets should stay buried, arguing that reopening these wounds only causes more pain for families who've spent decades trying to heal and move forward with their lives.